Every generation of Christ followers faces a challenge. How do we pass the faith to the next generation? Well, we have to know them, and we have to know their culture. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. This is Breakpoint. Here's something you might not realize. Officially speaking, the emerging generation, well, they're not the millennials. Anyone born after 1997 is part of the generation that's been dubbed, for reasons I'm not completely sure about, Generation Z. Now, the distinction's more than one of just different names. Millennials and Gen Z have been shaped by different experiences and different ideas. Most millennials can remember a time when the new sexual orthodoxy wasn't, well, considered orthodox, and people who opposed, or at least were ambivalent about it, weren't called bigots. Well, this is much less true of Generation Z, who even before Obergefell were being catechized in the new sexual orthodoxy at school and by mass culture. Even more important and distressing is that members of Generation Z are now leaving the church at an unprecedentedly high rate. Now, I confess, I feel a little bit like the boy who cried wolf even saying that, given the overblown and often unsupported claims of the rates of young people from previous generations leaving the faith. It's always been bad, not as bad as you've heard, but let me be clear, it's worse for Generation Z. And I'd add, I have significant anecdotal evidence that older generations feel a greater generation gap between them and their Gen Z kids and grandkids. All of this to say, we've got some serious thinking to do about how we can transmit the truths of the gospel and the worldview that flows from it to Generation Z. And to start with, what's worked for previous generations may not work for them. Well, thankfully, two of the best thinkers and communicators I know of have jump-started the conversation. Sean McDowell and Colson Center Senior Fellow J. Warner Wallace have just published a book, So the Next Generation Will Know, Preparing Young Christians for a Challenging World. Both writers are already well known for their ability to make the case for the reasonableness of Christian truth and morality. And while there's some of this in their new book, it isn't the primary focus. The focus is on what they call a biblical way forward to confronting the challenges posed by Gen Z's lack and or loss of faith. This way forward starts with taking into account the interplay between truth and relationships. As they put it, doing a better job of teaching truth and making the case for Christianity is only part of the answer. To those reasonable explanations that we must offer young people, we also have to add authentic relationships. And that can be harder than we think. First, there's a strong temptation to emphasize the relationship part over the truth part. We can be so desperate to preserve the relationship that we'll hesitate to speak the truth in love for risk of offending the person. For example, I don't know of a single biblical or theological authority who's changed their mind on any of the contemporary sexual issues of our day, who didn't have a son, daughter, or close family member struggling with one of those letters of the acronym. On the other hand, these kind of authentic relationships takes work, time, and patience. We can't preempt the relationship part and then think our job is done. McDowell's and Wallace's way forward requires taking this to heart. We've got to be willing to invest the time necessary and build the trust necessary to get at what the next generation is thinking and what they're feeling. That's why this book about transmitting a Christian worldview to the next generation includes a section on something as important and yet simple as, get this, eating together. This book, in my opinion, is a necessary read for parents, grandparents, pastors, and educators. Anyone invested in the faith of Gen Z. Come to Breakpoint.org, click on this commentary. We'll tell you how to get a copy of So the Next Generation Will Know with your next donation to Breakpoint and the Colson Center. Again, that's Breakpoint.org. For Breakpoint, I'm John Stonestreet.